We got a great show today. We're talking about how we educate our young people. K through 12 education has some of the same systemic issues of bias and racism as grown folks. It's not as if it starts once a person gets out of high school. And these racial disparities, they coexist with our young people. We're going to talk about how it impacts Black children in the United States of America. To talk about this, I have Zakia Sankara-Jabar. She is the National Director of Activism at Brightbeam, the parent organization of Education Post. She is the co-founder of Racial Justice Now and most recently served as the National Field Organizer, at Dignity in Schools campaign. Zakia, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Richey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Sister, you're doing the work of God, and you have been able to be an advocate and truth seeker as it relates to our Black children in the classroom. Let's talk about that. Are Black children being discriminated against at the same level, if not more, inside of white-dominated educational systems?
Wow. Yeah, that's a loaded question right there. And I would say, at least from the experience of my organizing experience in a couple of states in this country, and certainly national as well, I would say that there is certainly evidence that Black children are continuing to be discriminated against, despite civil rights legislation. Just like in other areas of our lives, we still see that there is rampant anti-Blackness, is actually what I call it.
Let me read to you a study. There's a new study out by Dean Batty. Dean Batty led this study, who's an associate professor of mathematics education in the Graduate School of Education at Rutgers University in New Jersey. This study found that white teachers, now get this is really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
White teachers in majority Black classrooms have more negative, highly charged interaction with students regarding classroom behavior than white teachers in predominantly white classrooms and Black teachers in predominantly Black classrooms. So according to this study, you have a heightened aggression factor between teacher and student when it is a white teacher and a Black student. And you do not see the same hyperaggression of behavior or those interactions when you mix it the other way around, or you have Black teachers and Black students, or white teachers and white students. This variable only existed in this study when you had a white teacher and a Black student. Help unpack that. Why?
Unfortunately, we know that the socialization of anti-Blackness is rampant, and certainly it is reinforced in schools by adults who have explicit bias and implicit bias. It's a combination of that. And I think you also see it in other data when it comes to how young people are learning in our schools. That's something at Brightbeam that we're very much concerned about, is making sure that our young people are learning and advancing in the ways that they need to.
Yeah, there's been obviously some research done on this. I just read one research study that was recent. The United Negro College Fund, they released some data, and they found that systemic bias in teachers as it relates to white teachers show that expectations for their Black students is lower. And that lower expectation creates some systemic issues such as college readiness, or it impacts college readiness. Also, another stat from the United Negro College Fund found that students of color are often concentrated in school districts with fewer resources. Schools with 90% or more students of color spend over $700 less per student during that school year. That is a systemic issue. And that issue goes back to the economy of race, as I call it. What is being done to resolve that? Because honestly, the Biden administration has not tackled this issue, and they should. So talk about that.
I completely agree. I think that certainly the Biden administration has, in my opinion, not paid as much attention to education as they should. And I think that, you know, everything that's happening with this right-wing revolt against learning the truth about American history with critical race theory and white parents coming out and basically fighting the truth being told about the inception of this country and the continued oppression of Black people and our Black children as well. So, you know, the systemic issue, to your question, what's being done about it, you have organizations, Black-led organizations and social justice organizations who are fighting for equity in education, who are fighting for a reparations agenda. There's a number of local organizations that are led by Black parents. There's also national organizations such as Bright Beam and others who are doing the work in our cities, in our states, and all across this country, not to just move it at the federal level, because as you know, as an educator, a lot of education law and a lot of education funding actually comes from states, since we don't have a federal right to an education, unfortunately, in this country.
Let me talk about critical race theory. You brought it up, CRT. There has been an attack on the teaching of critical race theory. And here's what's interesting. I teach critical race theory at the university. I've taught CRT for years. Critical race theory is simply a theoretical framework to utilize history, common sense, statistical data to understand the cause and effect relationship of race and racism in our societal construct. Republican lawmakers are literally passing laws to make it illegal to think, to make it illegal to teach, to make it illegal to give somebody facts. And here's what's interesting about all of these laws that are being passed around this country. You don't have laws that say don't teach Hitler. You don't have laws that tell teachers they can't teach white supremacy. Now, we would hope out of their better judgment they would not do these things, right? But we don't have a law telling them not to. We have a law telling them not to teach the reality of racism in the United States of America.
That's exactly right. And I think it's unfortunate. And it's also being pushed by the same people who supported the previous president. You know, people who are upset that in their mind, the country is going into the wrong direction. And so I think they're pulling out all the stops, if you will, to push back against whatever they think is about to happen to them. This fear that people of color, which we know has been projected will become the majority in this country. And so these people are doing tactics. I mean, I think they're pulling things out of the air, you know, to do what they believe is protecting their own children. But what they're doing, I believe, is actually not beneficial for children, not even white children. I think white children deserve to know the truth in the history about this country. And they also can be agents of change if they learn the
That's
history.
right.
You see what I'm saying? They could be the actual agents of change once they become adults, and to help reverse a lot of the anti-Blackness that's continuing to happen since the inception of this country.
Yeah, it becomes a very sad ecosystem of indoctrination when you do not allow truth to come in. But remember, we've just gone through a presidency where truth was a rare commodity. And as long as individuals stayed inside of their bubble of information, then that bubble had no threat of being pierced because if truth came to them, they simply called it fake news and they kept moving on with their lives.
That's the unfortunate truth about it. I think that one of the things that I'm actually excited about is there are students, there are parents, and there are other organizations who are coming together, particularly around this CRT issue, because they have to push back at the local levels with the school boards. A lot of the school boards have even been having some of their races decided. I think there was one in Texas where the person who came out against critical race theory actually won that seat. So this is also becoming much more hyper political, in which, in my experience, local school boards are some of the most non-political seats in a lot of cities. But
Yeah.
now that is changing, thankfully, because parents, not white parents, but Black parents are saying, "Hey, wait a minute, we want our children, you know, to have the truth. We don't want this for our community." And it's really sad because it's happening in districts all across this country, and in different racial makeups as well. It's very concerning.
Sister, I appreciate your time today. Tell us how we can follow you on social media.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. People can follow me on Twitter at Zakia Shinyere.
Awesome. Thank you. We appreciate you joining us on the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.